When they started, R.E.M. were no one's idea of a sure thing. Every decision they made flew in the face of common sense. After a nightmare supporting the Police in 1983, they vowed no more high-profile support slots. No to American Bandstand, because frontman Michael Stipe was uncomfortable lip-syncing. Additionally, Stipe was so terminally shy, he could barely form a sentence in interviews, and mumbled his lyrics into the mic. And yet step by stumbled step, with their chiming, bristling, cryptic alternative pop, they became the US Underground's great hope. By 1987's Document, they even blundered into a misunderstood pop hit. Idealistic and awkward in equal measure, this is the story of R.E.M. and how the preeminent college rock band graduated. R.E.M. formed in Athens, Georgia, just as the 70s rolled into the 80s. The band met at the University of Georgia. Their rhythm section of drummer Bill Berry and bassist Mike Mills had been playing frat parties in a covers band, while singer Michael Stipe was studying art. Stipe had previously met guitarist Peter Buck at his job at a local record store. All had been energized by punk, especially the more artful side of Patti Smith, Television, Gang of Four, Wire, and the Soft Boys.
Every night before I go to sleep, I see the evil, the problem of leisure, what to do for pleasure. He lies on his side as he tries to hide. In fact, it's the earth which is.
Soon, Stipe and Buck moved into a dilapidated church together and started writing songs, while Athens had its own burgeoning scene featuring the B-52s and Pylon. Soon R.E.M. were off playing their sloppy covers and originals all over the Deep South. At the time, their performances bristled with punk energy and amateurism, thrashing through songs to disguise their relative incompetence. Stipe wouldn't learn the difference between bass and guitar until the recording of their second album. As the touring circuit for US alternative bands had yet to be established, R.E.M. played wherever would have them. Gay bars, pizza joints, wings places, and coffee shops, retracing roots from other alternative tour pioneers Black Flag and Sonic Youth, living off $2 a day, restricted only by their gasoline budget. But they made an impression. We wanted to present those people with something that was just undeniable. By the time we were finished, we wanted them to think that everything else was irrelevant. I just loved that challenge. And we did it every night, man, in all those bars. Man, we must have played like 200 bars all over the South. We'd go in and there'd be maybe 30 people if we were headlining a cheap drink night. Because we always tried to play cheap drink nights, because that would draw them in. And by the end of the set, we'd always be able to kind of go, see? Now tell your damn friends about this. In July 1981, the band released the jangling, mush-mouthed heart rush, Radio Free Europe, on the tiny indie Hibtone. It was recorded as a demo tape, an attempt to get more gigs, but was picked up by college radio. Part of its appeal was its inscrutability. Chorus aside, Stipe rhythmically spitting whatever cut-up syllables fit, with listeners coming to their own conclusions as to what he meant. This would be a motif of early R.E.M. Their usually student fans greatly enjoyed dissecting and discussing Stipe's obscure lyricism in hushed, conspiratorial tones, like a puzzle to be solved. It also stood in stark analog contrast to the cleanly sung Anglophile synth pop that populated college station playlists. Later, Stipe would admit that his mush-mouth vocals weren't about creating mystique. He sang that way because he hadn't finished writing the lyrics when the time came to record. After Radio Free Europe gained traction, the next tour they were playing venues the next size up, earning more, expanding their gasoline budget, but also giving them increased faith in this foolhardy endeavour. Soon the band recorded an EP, the cryptic power pop Chronic Town, and rejected an offer from major RCA to release it on semi-indie R.E.M Records in August 1982. By the year's end, Chronic Town was the number 2 EP on Village Voice's Paz and Jop list, a survey of the nation's critics' favourites. Their debut album, Murmur, came out in April 1983. It didn't sound like anyone else. Their closest US comparison at the time was The Replacements, but on their debut, R.E.M. had already bypassed the power trash trappings that characterized the Mats' opening volley. Murmur was a more stately, unhurried affair, spacey post-punk texture, and danceable interplay. At its best, it was folk in the Southern Gothic tradition, powered forward by punk bravado. The album would sell 200,000 copies in its first year. Its re-recorded version of Radio Free Europe would be their first song to chart on the Hot 100, at number 78. And this was despite R.E.M. being uncomfortable playing the commercial rock game. Unconventional song structures, indecipherable lyrics. They rejected big-name support tours, and Stipe, due to shyness, was unwilling to be interviewed, wouldn't lip-sync in videos, and generally made things awkward for their label. IRS were insisting on a lyric sheet for Murmur. We wrote about 20 songs in the space of that year that were going to be on Murmur, ended up playing 15. Michael took all his favourite phrases from all these songs, some that weren't on the record, some that were deleted from songs. He arranged them as a short story and gave them one paragraph. It almost made sense. And they said, well, I guess we won't put out a lyric sheet this time. Another Year or Another album, released in April 1984, the rougher, readier Reckoning was a conscious smashing of the sophomore slump. It was recorded quickly, somewhere between 11 days and 3 weeks, depending on who you ask. Fueled by alcohol and the extreme pressures of fame, Stipe claimed he didn't eat for the entirety of the sessions, a problem which would become full-blown bulimia within a year. Reckoning sold double what their debut did in its first year. The countrified double-time ballad South Central Rain, with its rivers of suggestion, becoming another college radio staple. 6 months prior, the band had played the track on David Letterman, and further consolidated Stipe's public persona. We did South Central Rain on David Letterman before we had a title for it, and they were all really nice to us. We were so green. The producers told us before the show that Dave would come over and talk to one band member after the song, and so Peter was chosen to represent us all. We made it through the song fine, but when Dave came over to talk, I sat down on the floor monitor, and from that moment on, forever and ever, I was dubbed enigmatic.
Are you gentlemen ready?
I guess so.
Okay, and if I don't get a chance to see you before the end of the show, thank you very much for being here, folks. Nice meeting you guys. Ladies and gentlemen, R.E.M.
As another year rolled around, IRS again needed R.E.M. to record new material. If the 4 years prior had been the band gathering speed, 1985 and the recording of Fables of the Reconstruction was almost the tunnel painted on the brick wall. The endless momentum had provided little chance to catch their breath, and now they found themselves exhausted, emotionally wrecked, still broke, and in London for 6 weeks, where the only days it wasn't raining, it snowed. R.E.M. had recorded their previous 2 albums with Don Dixon and Mitch Easter in North Carolina, but wanting to change things up, the band looked elsewhere, with Van Dyke Parks, Hugh Pageant, and Elvis Costello under consideration. Ultimately, they went with Peter Buck's suggestion, Joe Boyd, who'd worked with British folkies Nick Drake and Fairport Convention, and more recently continued to work with Richard and Linda Thompson on 1982's Shoot Out the Lights.
Gonna see the riverman.
Who knows where the time goes?
Shoot all the lights.
But Boyd's traditional methods clashed against R.E.M's vibe-based style. When Boyd asked how a certain track sounded, Stipe replied, like a large turnip in a metal cage up against a ceramic shower wall. Stipe himself was not in the best state of mind going into the sessions. I was going through a pretty profound depression. I didn't recognize it as such. I was ridden with anxiety. I was malnourished because of my vegetarian choices. We were touring constantly. I was very concerned at that point about AIDS, which I think they had titled the gay cancer. I wasn't sick, but people were starting to die around me. I didn't know if I wanted to be a pop star or not. It wasn't all the teenage fantasy that I thought. All these things collided. But the whole band was suffering, as well as being endlessly cold and damp. They had little money, and the only food in England they could stomach was the local Indian cuisine. Peter Buck was drunk most of the time, similarly depressed, and was not really sure if he wanted to be in the band anymore. And do this professionally. This feeling of dislocation, of misery, can be heard on the record. The desolate, woozy opener, feeling gravity's pull. The Patti Smith-inspired strum and seasick harmonies of Maps and Legends.
Here I go and I don't know why. I feel so ceaseless. Maybe he's caught in the legend. Maybe he's from the blue.
And the fleeting, mistimed relationship of Kohutek. It was here that Stipe moved away from the conscious nonsense of Murmur and Reckoning, his songs now having still ambiguous narratives and backstories. Life and How to Live It was inspired by an Athens local who, when he died, was found to have split his house into 2 separate apartments. Alternating living in either half. He left behind 1,000 copies of a self-published book titled Life, How to Live. Wendell G. was a guy who ran a used car lot just outside Athens. Driver 8 continues the Southern folk tradition of songs about trains. As the album's title suggests, they are all reconstructions of fables from the Deep South. But seldom would Stipe reveal this information in interviews, feeling that the quest for knowledge was more important than the answer. Too much, too often these days is simply handed to its audience, complete like a platter. MTV is a good example. Television generally is a good example. There's no room for imagination, no room for improvisation, for interpretation. Everything is rehearsed. No one's able to find out anything for themselves. It's all become too easy. Fables of the Reconstruction was released in June 1985. The horn-led Gang of Four funk of Can't Get There From Here, with its drive-in movie theatre music video, reached number 14 on the Top Rock Tracks chart. While Driver 8 would become a college radio fixture. And continuing the trend, Fables was their biggest selling album so far, though it peaked 1 place lower than Reckoning on the Billboard 200, at number 28. But as big as the band had become, they were hampered by being uncomfortable with the spotlight. Despite Boyd's best efforts, at the band's insistence, the album's mix is indistinct, gauzy, and not something that would pop on radio. Fables of the Reconstruction was the first time the music press realised that R.E.M. were fallible, at least after a spell. One criticism that started surfacing in reviews was that, as satisfying as their jangling alternative pop was, the band seemed hesitant to change things up or challenge themselves. That said, it still made the 1985 Village Voice Pageant list, but a worst ever showing at an absolutely shocking number 7. However, it still beat Sade's Diamond Life, Kate Bush's Hounds of Love, and Jesus and Mary Chain's Psycho Candy. At the same time, and pretty much since the release of Murmur, R.E.M. had been positioned at the forefront of the American rock renaissance, a bunch of what we now call college rock or alternative bands that stood in opposition of mainstream rock music. Critically acclaimed, quirky, ramshackle, and extra points if they had chiming guitars and impenetrable lyricism. Some bands foisted into this press creation had just appeared at the same time as R.E.M.
Yeah, they do it all the time. Yeah, they do it all the time. I stop. I don't enjoy you anymore. The boy next door is into bigger things. The boy next door is me. All right. It's different now. You speak and every word means no. And I really don't know.
But now, there was a cottage industry of bands that formed after hearing Murmur. We ushered in something that doesn't exactly exist, and you can't define it. I kinda like that. Put it on my tombstone. I don't think we did. We were maybe the first known of all these bands they lumped together, but I don't know. We worked real hard on the road and got known first, but we didn't invent anything. I wouldn't want to take the responsibility for it if we did. R.E.M.'s 1986 album Life's Rich Pageant was a definite change of pace. Its big drummed and loud guitared clean rock sound, drawing comparisons to the Heartlands rock of Springsteen, Bryan Adams, and John Cougar Mellencamp. Its title was purposely missing its punctuation mark. Peter Buck firm in his belief that there's never been a good rock album that had an apostrophe in the title. Its lead single, Fall On Me, was one of the first times Stipe had injected his support for environmentalism into song, dealing with the disturbing appearance of acid rain.
By the sky until the sky until the sky.
This was especially obvious as, for the first time ever, producer Don Gurman had placed Stipe's vocals at the forefront of the mix. Life's Rich Pageant was the reconstruction of the deconstruction that Fables became. Don Gurman came in with his really big drum sound, and that opened some doors for us.
There's a problem with feathers iron bargain building.
He was also the first person to challenge me on my lyrics, just saying, "What the f*** is this about?" When it came out in July 1986, it was another step up, their first album to go gold, but as it didn't sell reckless numbers, the producer saw it as a disappointment. Life's Rich Pageant slipped R.E.M. down the Pageant list a further place to number 8, snugly between Peter Gabriel's So and Elvis Costello and their Attractions' Blood and Chocolate. However, while they would never admit so at this stage, the added clarity and installing Gurman as producer pointed to a cult underground band realizing they could be a very big deal. "1987's Document was R.E.M.'s big next step. Here they took the cleaner, less muddled, more rock production of Life's Rich Pageant, and Stipe becoming more confident, allowing himself to be heard, and applied it to a less pondered over set of material. As producer this time they chose Scott Litt, who'd produced the DB's Repercussion album, as well as Walking on Sunshine. and had first worked with R.E.M. a few months earlier on the track Romance, which they recorded for the film Made in Heaven. The choice in producers was a good one. Lit would go on to produce their next 5 albums, including Green and Automatic for the People. More than on any previous album, there was an encompassing theme, that being their perception of the US in 1987. There was a lot to be pissed about in the 7th year of Ronald Reagan. Money-hungry televangelists, greed is good Wall Street guys, late Cold War tensions. Not to mention that 2 months before the album was released, it was revealed that the US government had sold missiles to Iran to finance a coup in South America. R.E.M's faith in the system was at an all-time low, just as their self-belief was skyrocketing. We were becoming more confident in our ability to play, to pull off whatever we wanted to try. In this case, we wanted to try and come out strong and be loud. We wanted to incorporate some of the angularity, some of the muscle, some of the things we'd seen and learned in touring. When you add that with the anger we had at the US government at the time, we were pissed off as any decent American citizen should have been. That was the record we came out with. Side 1 of Document is a bustling polemic, a clenched fist expressed through the band at their crunchiest and most chaotic. Stipe clearer than ever, dissecting unprecedented times, with dreamlike, frantic verses. Opener, Finest Work Song, is a towering call to arms.
The time to rise has been engaged.
Unveiling the lie at the center of the American dream.
What we want and what we need.
That the lowest rungs of society's belief that working hard in aid of a better life will always be exploited.
Has been confused, been confused.
The typewriter tapping, exhuming McCarthy references witch hunting 1950s senator Joseph McCarthy.
Exhuming McCarthy. Exhuming McCarthy.
And how history repeats itself. The current administration resorting yet again to us versus them morality policing.
You're honorable, more honorable than me.
Yet more interested in money than anything else.
Loyal to the Bank of America.
Even the wire cover fits. Strange taking off 1977's pink flag compounds the illusion of progress.
There's something going on, there's not one but other. There's something going on, it's not quite right.
Side 1 ends with "It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine." A heart-bursting ramble through the attention overload of television, and the numb acceptance of potential nuclear annihilation as the Cold War fumbled towards a conclusion.
Feeling pretty sight. It's the end of the world as we know it.
Like a turbocharged subterranean homesick blues, Stipe's stream of consciousness flits between ideas, akin to a bored tube jockey flicking through TV channels.
John is in the basement mixing up the medicine. I'm on the pavement thinking about the government.
Team my team reporters babble Trump, Kevin Crop. Look at that, another plane. Fine, then, overflow.
It had been based on an earlier, similarly high-tempo, unreleased R.E.M. song called PSA, aka Public Service Announcement,
Broadcast me a joyful noise into the times. Lord, count your blessings.
which was then dusted off for their 2003 In Time Best Of collection as Bad Day.
Bad day. Please don't take a picture. It's been a bad day.
End of the World's opening line references Stipe's supposed psychic link with tremors, how he found his headaches would line up with seismic activity in the continental United States.
That's great. It starts with an earthquake, birds and snakes, an airplane.
All the celebrities name-checked in the song align with a dream he had, where he was invited to a party, and was the only one there not with the initials LB.
Mountain Sid in a light, Leonard Bernstein, Leonard Brezhnev, Lenny Bruce and Lester Bangs.
But then the next line references an actual party Stipe and Buck attended. There's the one verse with the Jelly Bean Lester Bangs boom, which came from me and Michael going to a party in 1980, when we went to New York for the first time, and we went to Karen Maline's house. She's a journalist. And the guys from Joe King Carrasco and Lester Bangs were there. and all they had was birthday cake and jelly beans, and we were starving and ate that.
Birthday party, cheesecake, jelly bean, boom, you symbiotic, patriotic, slam button, nap.
A random story that popped into a song 8 years later. Side 2 features additional experiments. Stephen Berlin of Los Lobos was brought in to supply hot saxophone leads on Fireplace. While the use of dulcimer on King of Birds would point to Peter Buck going beyond his Rickenbacker in the near future. By the Document sessions, R.E.M. had first single The One I Love fully fleshed out, having played it through the back half of the Life's Rich Pageant tour. Though according to Lit, they did try playing it in an acoustic, ballad mode.
This one goes out to the one I love.
Before settling on the twanging, windswept version we know today.
This one goes out to the one I've left behind.
Scott Litt's production made it so that listeners can make out what Stipe was singing about, but that didn't mean that listeners would be able to understand what he meant. Many took the song at its title as a simple love song, one of devotion, missing the sting in the verse's tail.
A simple prop to occupy my time.
It's a brutal kind of song, and I don't know if a lot of people pick up on that, but I've always left myself pretty open to interpretation. It's probably better that they just think it's a love song at this point. I don't know. That song just came up from somewhere, and I recognized it as being real violent and awful. But it wasn't directed at any one person. I would never ever write a song like that. Even if there was one person in the world thinking, this song is about me, I can never sing it or put it out. Document was released at the end of August 1987. In October, Buck dared to admit to Rolling Stone that he felt that certain tracks on the LP might work well on top 40 radio, but as newly shiny as their music now sounded, they were still just a college rock band. That wasn't likely to happen. But as the albums had continued to do, Document quickly sold twice what Life's Rich Pageant had, and was their first to go platinum. Part of the reason for this was the radio dominance of The One I Love, which hit number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100, i.e. the pop charts, in the first week of December. And while the band had got louder, more polished, and Stipe's words were no longer a mumble, they had compromised very little. The video, a staple on MTV, still dealt in obscure imagery, Stipe still avoiding his dreaded lip syncing, and looking at the camera.
To the one I've left behind.
For the End of the World clip, the band didn't appear at all, and yet it became another college rock, soon to be dubbed modern rock staple.
Step down, watch your heel crush, uh-oh, this means no fear, cavalier, renegade, steer clear.
A couple of years later, Billy Joel put out the similarly scattershot, We Didn't Start the Fire, though denies the link. R.E.M. was still on IRS, and yet each album had taken them a step away from solely cult status. They were now able to sell out 2 shows at Radio City Music Hall, and were beginning to worry about the size of their crowds, and exactly who were attending them. There are a lot of people who like bands when they're smaller, and I'm one of them. I really love the Replacements, but I don't go see them now. I saw them in front of 20 people 50 times, and the same with Husker Du. The last time I went to see Husker Du, I was like 800 people back, and getting elbowed in the guts by a fat guy with a leather jacket. So whenever people say, you're just too big, I don't enjoy going to your shows, I say, that's fine. Document was the last album of their 5-album contract with IRS. While they had been in negotiations to continue their contract, by this point R.E.M. were getting too big for the label's limited distribution network. So after being romanced by every major label under the sun, in 1988 they signed to Warner Brothers for a sum rumoured to be in the 8-figure range. One of the main reasons we signed with Warner's was because we had creative control over everything we did. R.E.M. always have done whatever we felt was right, so the only decision makers were those of us in the band. However, before they released their major label debut, Green, in November 1988, they were able to, for the first time in their career, take some time off from the record, rehearse, tour grind. Of course, as well as Document had done, placing them as the best-selling college rock band around. Peter Buck felt that they could do more, be better, showing the kind of ambition that would shame his younger, punker self. Their similarly jangling and literate UK counterpart, The Smiths, whose debut single, Hand in Glove, was released almost exactly 1 month after Murmur, had announced their split in August 1987, but Buck felt that R.E.M. were just getting started. I think it's within us to make one of those top 20 all-time rock and roll great records. We haven't done that yet, and I don't know how you pull that out of you. Sometime, somewhere, the inspiration hits, and you hope it hits when you're awake and you have a guitar in your hands. Earlier in the same Rolling Stone feature from December 1987, Stephen Pond noted as he and Buck walked and talked through New York City. Buck had in his possession a newly acquired $500 mandolin. Buck said he'd learn to play it sooner or later. As the 90s approached, R.E.M. were on the cusp of something. Bigger than the underground, bigger than alternative. But sorry, they'll have to wait. We're out of time. Thanks for watching. So what is your favourite rock album with an apostrophe? Comment down below. If you like this video, like, subscribe, and why don't you share it with a couple of people? It really does help. As always, I'd like to shout out this month's new top tier supporters over on Patreon. Thomas Gilmartin and Brandon Barker. And thanks to everyone else that supports me. And I will see you next time for another Alt Hit Wonder.